Welcome to a very special extended edition of the Barefoot Bushcraft radio show. Today is Saturday, July 12th, 2014, and we are live at the 2014 annual Preppers Meet being held a little north of Shelburne, Ontario, Canada. Coming to you from our studio, this is show producer and co-host A.D. Venture. And broadcasting directly from the event itself, here's your host, the Wolfman.
Hello and welcome everyone to this special edition of the Barefoot Bushcraft radio show.
And what a show we have in store for you this week. However, before we go any further, I'd like to start by telling our listeners a little more about the annual Preppers Meet. This 3-day event brings together top survivalists, preppers, and self-reliance experts all in one location. There are also many different presentations, activities, and workshops, all where you can learn a lot more about topics like archery, wild edibles, alternative energy, and more. Now, we have quite a few guests that we will be featuring on today's show, and I know the Wolfman is standing by with one right now. So, Wolfman, take it away.
So I'm here with one of the organizers, Che, and Che, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about the meeting.
How you doing, Wolf? It's good to see you again. Wolf's a buddy of mine. The annual Preppers Meet is the largest prepper event, single event, over the course of 3 days. A combination of all the best preppers and survivalists throughout Ontario get together. We hang out, and this year we wanted a cool, enticing location, so talked to my buddy Bruce, who's featured on Doomsday Preppers. He's got the 42 school buses underground in a bunker known as the Ark, too. So we're kind of camping out here. And yeah, good people, good fun, lots of sunshine. Everything's going pretty good so far, and pretty excited on day 2.
Well, that's cool. So you said there's a lot of experienced people here. Yeah. Is there anything here for like inexperienced people, someone who's new to prepping, doesn't even know what a bunker is?
Sure. I mean, what experience I meant more specifically with the hosts, the presenters. They're top of their class, top of their league. I mean, we've got survivalists that are hands down. There's a couple people here that are hands down top survivalists in Canada. Doug Getgood, David Arama, to name a couple. In addition to their presentations, and David's doing something on GPS tomorrow. Doug is talking about how he spent a year in the wild. I got Alan in the background right now showing everybody how to dress a rabbit. And it's diverse, and it's from beginners to advanced, I'd say. I mean, if you don't have any experience in prepping or survival skills, you can definitely jump in where everybody else is at and take something home with you. That's for sure.
Oh, that's kind of cool. So it's certainly something that, like you say, is for every skill level. And I see everything here from, like you say, wandering around, and there's people skinning rabbits, and I think there's a wild edibles thing going on, and there's people who hope for renewable energy. So tell me about, people get this thing for prepping where they think it's a bad thing. It's like the word survivalist. It becomes a bad word. But can you tell me how the everyday average guy can look at prepping as a way of life rather than some kind of detached thing that the media seems to make it?
That's a pretty good question. Wild edibles is going on right now with Karen Stevenson. She's probably, if not the best, one of the top 3 wild edible experts in Ontario right now, without a doubt. With respect to the everyday person getting into prepping, unfortunately, there's a large stigma of negativity that's pretty much it's driven through the media. The media has a very ignorant stereotype of what preppers are really all about. And I mean, we're talking about media is profit driven, so they make money through excitement, and they tend to take things and make things go way out of proportion. And drama sells. So that prepper in the bunker with all the guns waiting for the government to kick the door in is what people are attracted to. Not what people are attracted to, but what the media portrays preppers as. And that's simply not the case. I mean, people get into this because of religious reasons. They get into it because they're ex-military, what they've seen overseas. They get into it because of logic and reason. They can just see, okay, in the past we've had viral pandemics. We may have one in the future. It's inevitable. We're going to have one. Maybe it's a good idea if I put together a bug-out bag or something like this. Most importantly, people get into this because they experienced it, and this could mean anything from Hurricane Katrina, recent blackout a year ago or so in New York, where you went without water for 3 weeks. Those experiences produce the best preppers because they've got they have a good core for where they're coming from. Now, this doesn't mean prepping isn't about how many bullets you have, how many canned goods you have, and sitting in a bunker with a rifle, like I said. It's just civil-minded precautions to take care of yourself, disconnecting from the system. It's not anti-government or anti-police or anything like this. It's just taking the control and power of your own well-being in your own hands. That's really what it's all about.
And that water, that's good.
So, a lot of times at events like this, they say that the real wheeling and dealing happens usually when during around the campfire. And we were talking around the campfire last night, saying things that prepping is, the government tells you it's a good idea. There's a big thing in Canada, and we talk about this a lot on the show, that says, you should be prepared for at least 72 hours. And again, like you say, anybody who has some overseas military experience or whatever, we'll see how quickly basically things go to heck with movies like The New Red Dawn, and that we can see how these sort of things happen. So we said that, what about just thinking about, what if you lose your job and you have 1,000 or 100 cans of food? Now you don't have to worry about groceries as much as you would if you didn't. So your mortgage might get paid versus having to choose between mortgage and food. So oftentimes, they say that the best conversations in meetups like this happen in the evening. We're sitting around the fire. And one of the things we were talking about last night was that, prepping is a good lifestyle. It's a wise, decent thing to do. The government of Canada, and we talk about this a lot on the show, has something called the 72-hour preparedness plan. You can go on the website, they give you all kinds of information. They tell you to be ready for 3 days, right? So if you have a bunch of supplies in your house, say you have, every time you go grocery shopping, you get 1 can of food extra, or you buy a couple of cans on sale. Now you have 150 cans of food in your house. Sometime in the future, you lose your job. Now I can continue to eat, and I can pay my mortgage, and I don't have to choose between the two. So I don't know if you can kind of speak to prepping as sort of taking it down a notch from the crazy media hype, which I feel is completely inappropriate, and most of our listeners do as well, to something that can be a nitty-gritty day-to-day thing.
You actually tapped into something that made it extremely practical to explain. I mean, having backup food is obviously a good idea, and that's people could lose their jobs, and food is not as much as a priority as it is a necessity of life. You need food to live. The truth of the matter is, we're all preppers. Everybody is a prepper to some degree. I mean, if you've left a warm jacket in your vehicle, just in case it gets colder in the evening, or a rain jacket, or brought some extra cash. These are all signs of people being prepared, just on a very small level. So all I'm doing is talking about, is taking that to the next level. Is what do you do if the power goes out? I mean, where do you get your water from? Where do you purify it? And these sorts of things. With respect to the government too, they have a bit of a double standard. They're a lot more fierce in the States, I'd say, with respect to preppers. I don't want to get into the legality, but I'll give you a couple of brief examples. There was a senator on YouTube stating that anybody that has more than a week's worth of food is considered a terrorist, and that obviously falls right in with what a prepper is all about. So it's an uphill battle that rational people that just want to take care of their own being have to take on, unfortunately. Canada's a little bit nicer. Nicer in that respect. I mean, They like you said, they've got a 72-hour kit. They're very open about communicating with people. They're all over Emergency Preparedness Week that happens every year in March. They're very open about communicating with the public about being prepared. Personally, I think that's more of a due diligence thing, because the truth of the matter is, if you're a prepper and you take it to the extreme of buying weapons and buying bullets, then the government probably has you on a database somewhere. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're an ethical person and you're just looking out for yourself and you've got nothing to hide, then you're fine. But bringing it back to the practical perspective, or the practical way to relate to prepping, it's very easy to explain. I mean, I mentioned the blackout in New York. If you see it on the news, we're so desensitized to what happens around the planet. You watch the news and, they get to the world news and people are shooting guns in the air, screaming. And, we're just used to seeing it. The truth of the matter is it's happening. The need to prepare is more prevalent now in this day and age than ever. And, going back to the blackout, we could have a blackout anytime. We really could. That's not an unreasonable claim. Look at viral pandemics, for example. The Spanish flu back in the early 1900s, that wiped out hundreds of thousands of people. And people that work at the Center for Disease Control say, look, it's just a matter of time. I mean, this isn't some guy on the street holding up a sign saying, the end is nigh. The end is nigh. It's not coming from that angle at all. I mean, when you've got a guy that's got his PhD, there's a show called Doomsday Prophets. There's a gentleman on there who's got his PhD in economics from Wall Street. And I believe it was from Harvard. And he worked on Wall Street for years and years and years. This is a guy with credibility. And he's coming from an angle of, we're going to have a financial collapse. It's that sort of credibility. Same with people that work from the Center for Disease Control. When they say, it's going to happen, it's inevitable, that really should drive the message home. When the experts are saying it's inevitable, it's going to happen. It's going to happen tomorrow, Wolf? I don't know, man. I don't think so. I don't have a crystal ball. Some preppers claim that they do. And unfortunately, we get all labeled into one melting pot as all being crazy. But that's just not the case. There's a very good percentage of preppers that are everyday people that just want to have the capacity to take care of their own well-being, like I originally said. Is it possible something will happen in 5 years? Don't know. 20 years? It may never happen. We don't know, and that's the whole point, is I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but it could. It could very well be. We could very well have a blackout next week, and that's a very fair statement to make, because it's plausible. We could have a comet hit the Earth, but realistically, a blackout or a viral pandemic or a financial collapse, these are things that if they happened, it wouldn't be a shock. It wouldn't be a shock to anybody. Like, how could this have happened? It would be more like, what are we going to do? So I'm just answering the next few questions that would follow after that with my own answers and my own supplies and my own skills and knowledge. And that's where prepping really begins.
That's really cool. Now, you have, I could continue to talk for you on several hours and just have you elaborate because it's something that myself and the other hosts on the show, we're so passionate about things like this. Especially, like you say, the real reality that anybody you talk to on the street, you ask, is everything right with the world? Almost every single person will say, I think there's something wrong, but I don't know what it is. And I think that maybe that sort of leads many people into the prepping world. I don't know. But you have a concept where you have 8 individual stages, and you gave a presentation about this earlier today to everybody. It was fantastic.
Thanks,
and I know that will end up on your YouTube channel as well, right? And on the website ontariopreppers.ca. Is that where it will be? Or
that's actually from my network. I can't take full credit for, as this isn't an Ontario Preppers Survival Network event. It's a unique event where we try and it's a conglomerate of all survivalists and preppers across Ontario, and that is connected with what's called the annual preppersmeet.com. And those 8 symbols, they They were created by me because after prepping for so long, it came down to 8 things, and they begin with 5 being the actual absolute necessities of life, which is food, fire, water, shelter. And a lot of bushcraft people and survivalists, they don't get this 5th one, but it seems to be so. It's obvious as a prepper. Preppers are prepping for it, which is oxygen. You need the capacity to breathe. In a viral pandemic situation, the oxygen is going to be more important. Protection or having clean oxygen is going to be more important than anything. The 3 concerns that are going to be very, very high on the list if something does happen is going to be your ability to secure your person, security, healthcare. You can't just go to an emerge room if there is a viral pandemic. That's probably the last place you would want to go. And a means to communicate or understand your surroundings, what's going on in the immediate area. So it's really about prepping from those 8 qualities. Everything that you prep for should derive from those 8 qualities or core competencies that I call Chay's core 8 essentials. Maybe I'll revise the term. I'm not firm on it yet, but I am firm on the 8 things. That's for certain. And if you break it down, I mean, it will look at food, for example. So, okay, do you need food to live? Yes, big check mark there. Okay, so how do I store food? Okay, well, we've got primitive skills methods, which include salting, curing, smoking, drying in the sun, these sorts of things. And, we've got the prepping perspective. So we're going to get some equipment in there, and we got a pressure canner. We've got a dehydrator. Nobody has a freeze-dried machine, but you can buy freeze-dried goods. They're very lightweight and portable, these sorts of things. Freezer, which is good until the power goes out, unless you have a backup system. And then you can see how it sort of trickles out. You've got canned goods as well. It trickles out to all these different branches of knowledge. So canning, for example. Okay, so you got a pressure canner. Which one should I get? What are the qualities? I got one that's gives me a weight on top as opposed to a dial gauge. There's a point you reach as a prepper where you just don't find the answers on Google. How do you pressure can peanut butter? Is it possible, feasible, these sorts of things? So once you focus on something like food and you get that under your belt and you touch on water purification and you touch on fire building and you touch on shelter building and these sorts of things, it's an endless stream of knowledge. It really is a lifelong thing that you do as preppers. It just goes deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole.
That's amazing. So these 8 things. Now, can we find these online, or is there any way for somebody who's like, that's really cool, I want to learn more, other than, of course, visiting your website? Is there any other way for them to find this? Do you have a book out yet?
Sure, man. Well, actually, I am working on a book right now, and I've already got 10 books lined up in my brain. I've already got the titles right now. When I do a book on bugging out, geostashing, it's probably going to be the first one. I'm going to do something completely on. Actually, the last book that I'm most excited to write, but I strongly feel it's almost sequential. People need to know about food preservation methods and wild edibles. People need to know about bartering. You could do a whole book on proper bartering, right? And that's more advanced. Before you get to the very last one, which is actually the title, it's called Dark Prepper Mindset, which discusses sort of the dark sides and unethical things that preppers might do. And it's more of, you look at hacking as an example. There's a lot of what are called white hat hackers that are good, and they learn a lot of the evil techniques as a means to defend. So that's what the Dark Prepper Mindset book is going to be all about. My network will continue to have events throughout the year. We've got a workshop where we're generating power by making a Stirling engine out of pop cans, which is kind of cool. To power a little radio and everybody will take one home. But if there's one event, and that's through OntarioPreppers.ca, if there's one event that you should come out to, it would be this one, annualpreppersmeet.com, where it's just this huge, awesome conglomeration of people, great experts in their field from all over Ontario, largest amount of attendance, single-handedly largest preppers event in Ontario.
That's awesome. So, I've been to this event. Unfortunately, I can't stay all the days, but I am here for a couple of them. Now, one of the things you talked about a lot that would probably strike many of our listeners as surprise is you talked about the networking aspect of prepping. Rather than like the lone wolf prepper, where you're bunking down in your concrete bunker,
about, like different prepper types.
Like most people think it's a very solo activity.
Yeah,
but you're saying that you get to a point where it's not.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Wolf. Prepper networking is something you graduate to. Prepping is something you graduate into. I can't convince you to become a prepper. I can't say, look it, the world's coming to an end, or whatever. You have to come to that conclusion on your own terms. When you break that bubble, it's important not to get stuck into research mode, or what I call armchair preppers, rather. Where they just read. They just sit on computers, they get on forums, and that's all they do. And it's sad. It's sad. You need to graduate to it's overwhelming. I've met so many preppers at this point that it is overwhelming. You will spend a little bit of time there. It's very natural. Where do I begin? What do I do first? I need my bug out bag. All these sorts of things. So once you break out of that shell, you will, or most people will, tend to be lone range preppers. And that's because, there's an anonymous factor. You don't want your neighbors knowing that you've got ammunition and food stores and these sorts of things, because you immediately become a target when something happens. It could be your best friend, but if he hasn't eaten in 3 days, he's probably not going to be so friendly. And if your whole neighborhood knows that you have stores, then you will be a target. That's inevitable. So the whole aspect of being anonymous is a concern as a prepper. So that's why I think a lot of people are lone rangers. They go into it, but eventually some of them break out of that shell, and that's where I'm opening the door, saying, hey, come join us, because networking is crucial. You can't do it all on your own. It's possible. I mean, you and I can go in the woods, we can go do our own thing and survive. But there are so many great benefits with networking with like-minded preppers, for a means of maybe connecting in the future, a bug-out team. It doesn't have to go that deep, though. You could have an agreement to meet somewhere in the future. You could exchange. The biggest thing is the knowledge. The biggest thing is exchanging ideas, with other people that are into this, because they're going to provide something that you didn't see. That's why shows like The Walking Dead and these doomsday sort of movies, they're kind of neat. A lot of them are frivolous. You have zombies and stuff like that. But it's that 2% or 3% of that movie where the guy, took a coat hanger and he MacGyvered it into this and he did that. It's like, wow, what a cool concept, or what a cool idea. You always grab that from one of these shows or movies. So networking also comes into play with respect to the skill sets, right? If you've got a firearms expert, right? That's great from a security perspective. That's part of the core. If you've got somebody that's a nurse, that's going to greatly enhance your overall survival if you have a team of people that you can connect with. So that's where networking becomes really, really important. And again, seeing, when I was mentioning you can't convince somebody to become a prepper, you can't convince them to open up and network either. They have to sort of discover that themselves. And people do. Eventually it comes to it. For some people it takes time, but when it does happen, it's great because they're at the same level as me. They're at the same level where they've got skills or they want to learn skills and these sorts of things. But most important beyond skills is the passion and dedication. That's such a critical thing. And I mentioned this in my bartering thing, where if you're a prepper and you're new, but you're into it, you're dedicated and passionate. Dedicated and passionate. If you're dedicated and passionate to prepping, then wow, skills can be taught. I'll take you over, the mechanical engineer that's been prepping for 20 years if he's a prick.
Well, I think attitude as well. And even when it comes to prepping, I think working as a coherent group and all the group dynamics and all that is very important as well. Like you said, and I think that sort of maybe kind of talks to passion a little bit. So I guess that's about all the time we have for you on the show, but stay tuned because we're going to have more people from this meetup. So if people want to get a hold of you again, can you just give us your website address
sure, will.
for the Prepper Meet?
Yep, annualpreppersmeet.com, or my personal network is the Ontario Preppers Survival Network through ontariopreppers.ca.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so next up we have Floris, and can you tell us a little bit about what brought you here and who you are and what you do?
Oh, I guess my customers brought me here. It's we were driven usually by what our customers are looking for, and a successful business starts that way, as far as I'm concerned. We started off in the business as buying and selling generators. Found they were lacking for people off-grid, and they were coming to us for more help. And we started selling off-grid equipment and configuring. It took a full 5 years before we could survive a month without having to do research to answer a question. It's all math if you do it right. It's because it's science.
Wow. So and you're talking about like generators, so to create power to a home?
You know, how much do you need? You know, usually these generators are not for backup during a power failure, but backup for the solar system nowadays. They both require math and science, but the solar system needs a lot more configuration and not more calculation. We came in mostly because most people didn't understand what they were selling, and the people that were buying had no clue. They took the seller's expertise, which was non-existent, and we'd end up with calls because we sold generators because they were using their generator way too much. Could we help them? So we repair their generator, and we ended up starting to build generators after that. We ended up repairing the generators and then helping them with their solar configuration.
Wow, so do you build generators in Canada?
Yeah. Nobody in Canada builds an engine, and nobody in Canada wires an alternator. And basically, it's the science of mating the two together with controls that creates a generator. So it's not rocket science.
It sounds like it from my perspective, but then, you know, I always tell people the only reason I don't wear shoes is so I can count past 10. So math is not my strong point.
So, you know, it was a progressive, you know, one thing led to another. Nowadays, we've found somebody who can assemble them the way we would want them. So I don't have to have a team working in the shop any longer. And we focus on the off-grid and I wouldn't call it survival or prep area as much as I would say the people who want to be autonomous when they're in their location away from the city. So it could be a prep situation. It could be a cottage that's without power. It could be a cottage that pays for power for 12 months a year and only uses it for 1.5. And says, hey, look, I lose so little, can't we replace it? So it took 5 years before we learned all of the ins and outs. There's a lot to do. And have to understand weather, how much sun, different times of year, different locations of Ontario. Surprisingly, Sudbury has more than an hour average of sun, useful sun, a day than Toronto does.
Wow.
Toronto has smog. Toronto has haze and other pollutions that affect them. Barrie is sort of halfway between. They still have all of the haze and the overcast coming across from the Great Lakes.
I'll just put this on pause for a second.
Yeah.
So now if I were to go and get one of these generators, say I had like a cabin in the woods or something like that, I mean, is there a preferred fuel, diesel or propane or natural gas? I mean, there's so many options. And I mean, do you help your customers figure out what's best for them?
Yes, we do. The issue really comes down to diesel can be stored for a long time, but it does need to be stored and it does need to be conditioned. A diesel generator costs almost 4 times as much as a propane generator.
Wow.
Natural gas is just not available in the Northland. You can get it in the city, of course. So what we do is we calculate out what the customer would normally use. Now, we usually, if they're connected to the grid, it's a matter of math. We use a formula based on how much their electricity is and how much overhead they need and to get them the right size generator. it's more complicated for off-grid people.
That's incredible. So if people are interested in learning more about you, do you have a website that they can visit?
Yeah, we're enviroharvest.ca. Enviro and then the word harvest in one thing. There's about 300 pages there. It's quite deep. We talk about a lot of things, and you'll find no prices and no sales pitch for any one product. We believe that a website should be informative rather than a sales tool. If you want, I want people to ask for what they think they need, and we'll help them get the right thing.
Wow, that's to me that's really great to hear. Any business that's like face to face. So you do the calculations, you actually help the customer. You don't just basically take their money, give them a product, and run. And that's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. It's honesty. That's all. If you do it the right way, it comes back. If you teach the customer their responsibilities for the system that they're taking, even a generator. Generators like to start once every Friday or whatever day of the week it is, and spin up and then turn down. And what I tell people is, well, if the guy next door used to cut the grass every Saturday afternoon, and when you're having a beer out in the back, would you notice if he didn't do that one day? And the answer is you probably wouldn't. The other thing is you don't know if the generator, when it starts up, is actually producing electricity. So what we prefer to do is give customers a schedule, their own, and turn off the big breaker, pretend you've got a power failure. Let the generator start up, let it run under a load, let it get nice and hot, and then turn it off, and you know for sure everything's working the way it's supposed to.
Wow, that's a great plan. That's almost sounds like, many of the things that we talk about here, about living the lifestyle of not just buying the generator and letting it rot, but powering it up. That's amazing. That's amazing. What great advice.
Well, thank you. The issue really comes down to there's everything as a prepper or as whomever is a system. And your generator is a system of its own. And you should check the generator before you start, that the oil level is right. There's not a new wasp's nest or mouse nest built inside. It happens all the time. If you let air in and out, you're going to let something else in and out. And if your generator starts up and you've got a mouse nest in there, you could have a fire.
Wow, that'd be bad.
So, and oil is the worst thing. Generators all consume oil because it's a very high torque, heavy application. It's like dragging a big trailer with your car. You always consume some more oil and fuel.
That's incredible. Okay, well, thank you very much. And what's your website again, just for our listeners?
Enviroharvest.ca.
Enviroharvest.ca. All right, thank you very much.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break. But when we get back, we'll hear more from some very special guests. This is AD Venture and the Wolfman, and we'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to this special extended edition of the Barefoot Bushcraft radio show, broadcasting live from the 2014 annual Preppers Meet. So, Wolfman, who's our next guest?
All right, so I have Colleen with me. So, Colleen, can you tell me a little bit about what you do in the prepper world? Now, I know you have a meetup group. You want to tell us a little about that?
Yeah, it's called the Toronto Survivalism Meetup Group. And what this group does is it links together all of the local Ontario prepper groups together. And it's different skills like homesteading, survivalism, and prepping. So events can range from trapping to aquaponics, and then things like tours of the Ark 2, canning events. So it's a whole variety of events that are linked together.
Wow, that's incredible. What brought you into the prepping lifestyle?
Well, it was actually the fear of 2012. So back in 2009, that's when I started to reach out to meetup groups, and Toronto Survivalism was the first group I participated in. And at that time, Doug Getgood was running the events, and he did a lot of bushcraft type wilderness skills events. And it was really nice to go out every single Sunday and be in the forest and learn new skills. And that I continued doing that for a few years, and it just inspired me to reach out to the rest of the community so that I could show them what events are out there. There's no other group that does that links all of the different activities together. And because I was participating in all of these, I just thought it was a way that I could share it with others since I was already going to the events.
Wow, so that's amazing that your group just doesn't host events, but it actually pulls people together and has a community. And that's the one thing I found in the prepper and the bushcraft is that there's a huge focus not just on our traditional skills or canning or trapping or whatever, but there's a huge focus on the interpersonal relationships and the community. I don't know, could you maybe speak to us a little bit about your experience with that? Do they welcome people with open arms? Are they cliquey? Or how do you find that sort of thing?
Well, because our events are so varying, it brings different groups of people together. So I think within that, I've developed some really good friendships, and I think other people have as well. So depending on what events that we attend. So now I have this whole other group of friends that I email and I talk to outside of Meetup. So that's been really nice. And then we camp together, and we've done bug out events together.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. Now, I know one of our radio co-hosts who isn't here at this event today, her name is Rhonda, and she has a whole bunch of women-only things. I believe her organization was called Chicks with Sticks. So do you find that there's more and more women getting into this lifestyle of prepping and bushcraft than there ever has been in the past?
Yeah, I think since 2009, since I've been involved, there's been more and more women. So now it's actually getting to about close to 50%, I'd say, with the events that I go out to. So that's been really good to introduce women to it.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, because I've noticed, especially with things like archery and that for sure, it's always, I find more women than men come out on this. And I think maybe it's losing its stigma. I don't know. But so if people are interested in learning more about your group, where would they go? Like a website or something like that?
Yeah, they could go to meetup.com and look up the Toronto Survivalism group.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
While we wait for the Wolfman to get our next guest, I want to remind all our listeners they can learn more about this event at the following website address, www.annualpreppersmeet.com. That's annualpreppers, with an S, meet.com. And you'll find a list of presenters, schedule, map to the location, and a lot more. So I believe the Wolfman is ready with our next guest.
So I have Dan with me right now from bugoutcanada.ca, and that's bugout-canada.ca. And you guys are located in the Barrie area, is that correct?
Well, actually, Wolf, we had our school there, but we recently purchased just a little over 100 acres of land up just southeast of Huntsville, just outside the town of Dorset. And that's where we're now officially, the school is located.
That's beautiful, beautiful countryside. And if you've never been up to that area, that's around the Algonquin Park area,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just beautiful up there. So can you tell me a little bit more about Bug Out Canada, some of the courses you run?
Mostly, our background is basically, I was a hardcore primitive skills guy. From day one, that was hardcore primitive skills. Grew up in a kind of like a survivalist lifestyle because of my parents. And, my dad, he was a university professor, so with summers off, we actually lived out in the woods for 3 months every year. I joined the military, Alan joined the military, and we got to learn about each other after we both had gotten out of the military. And, basically Alan became a commercial pilot, a bush pilot up north, and I became a civilian contractor working outside of Canada. And, went to Iraq and got wounded there and decided maybe I should just kind of change my lifestyle. That one was a little bit too close. So basically we started teaching low end, low key to people back about a decade ago. And, we just kind of came out of the woodwork in the last couple of years and said, let's just do this, and we'll just kind of put a sign up and we'll see who shows up. Wow. And so the type of classes we teach, mostly the type of skills, because even though we had all this very specialized training in the military, and because we were both operational, so we actually got to live through these experiences, and we got to experience things that most people never get a chance to experience. They get to experience it through the eyes of a Hollywood director, watching a movie. So we take those skills that we learned, those real high-end skills, high-speed, low-drag skills, and we try and how can we kind of flip them around and switch them around a bit so that the average person can learn them and utilize them to really great efficiency. So, I mean, we teach classes where we're going to, one of our classes is called Art of the Rifle, and where we take people is we take people that, maybe they've shot before, maybe they've never shot before. Maybe they're trying to figure out, do I want to get into this thing, hunting or just target practice? So they can come take the class, and in that weekend, we will take them basically, well, the last class we had someone who'd been in the Canadian military for 16 years, and they said that they learned more in that weekend than they did in 16 years in the military about firing weapons accurately. So, pretty much the standard for snipers is if they can get 2 minute of angle accuracy, and that's basically they got to be able to hit a 2-inch circle at 200 yards. A 2-inch circle at 100 yards. That's 2 minute of angle accuracy. We're able to take people almost to that level in one weekend, even if they've never shot before.
Wow, that's incredible. So is there a lot of tactical stuff, like police pistol combat style shooting where you're going to buildings?
We don't do any pistol work, only because, our thing is basically what people would call the fighting carbine. That's what most people would call it. So, that's the best thing. I mean, if your life ever depended on using a weapon, let's hope it's got a really long barrel. The longer the barrel, the better. You'll fare in a gunfight if you're more than a few feet away. But the other classes we teach are, that's our beginner classes, Art of the Rifle. We teach you everything we know. And, I've been competing since I was 13 years old in in shooting sports. Alan is he's a national champion, actually, in pistol shooting. And so between the both of us, we kind of sat down and said, okay, how can we make people great in one weekend? What's everything we're going to cover, and how can we do this? And we figured out a way to do it. Other than that, we have courses where if you want to become, a lot faster and a lot better, kind of like military-style combat shooting, we'll say. But, it's very applicable to, I'm a grouse hunter, I'm a deer hunter, and I use the exact same skills when I grouse hunt. So it's very applicable. It doesn't just have to be in a military sense. It's very applicable to whatever it is you're doing, like hunting. The whole idea in military combat type shooting is shoot the target as quickly as you can until it stops doing what it's doing. So, it's very applicable to hunting. The other classes we teach are, because we've been operational, we've been in the most worst places imaginable across this planet, in deepest swamps in the middle of freaking nowhere. I can't say that, can I, on your podcast? Freaking.
No, that's freaking's okay. Freaking's allowed.
Freaking's a good word.
If not, we could beep it out. But that's
because
fine.
of that, we've really learned, say, map and compass stuff. And I always tell people, it's for an instructor, you can't just teach stuff. You got to know what to teach and what not to teach. And we always teach people. We try and stuff it, everything they need, so that if they never see us again, they can walk away and go, I learned so much, but to master it, it's going to take me a lifetime. But I can still put it to use tomorrow, but it'll take me a lifetime to master it because I learned so much. So our map and compass courses are really phenomenal because we teach, and every course we design, I say to myself, can someone teach this better? Because if they can, we're not going to teach the course. And I really, really believe in that. In fact, that's why we have our 100% money back guarantee. If you're not happy on the course, you just tell us, we'll give you your money right back, and smile, shake your hand, and you can be on your way. Because we have that much faith in our course. Yeah. So we got the map and compass course. We do a tracking course. We do a 2-weekend-long woodsman course, which is like primitive skills and like the high-speed, low-drag stuff mixed together. Because we think that really is, you can't just be a purist, and you can't just be all the high-speed stuff. You got to have a blend of all the skills, the high-speed stuff and the primitive stuff, and they got to be, they got to be together, and that's the only way to the person whole.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And we talk about this a lot on the show where, if you were doing a long-term survival situation, your tactical skills will only take you so far. But you need your bush skills, your wild edibles, all that other stuff to take you past that hump where you start to run out of your own supplies, right?
Exactly.
I don't know if that sort of applies to the sort of things that you teach.
Yeah, it does. And we're down to, really our courses are, I need this skill, and I know I need this skill. But we don't go into a lot of the philosophy behind stuff, and, it's just, if you recognize you need a skill, and you realize that looking at our website that, we might have or teach that sort of skill, and then by all means, you need to call us because, like I said, we design every class so that it's untouchable by anybody else. It's got to be that way in us because we're so completely passionate about making sure that everybody walks on the Friday night. We have to have melds dropping to the floor when people go to bed and say, "Oh my God, I've learned so much. I can go home right now and I got my money's worth." Well, there's still another 2 days to go.
Well, that's a really fantastic teaching philosophy. And I think if more small businesses and large businesses in the outdoor rec industry had that attitude, I think we would see a great increase in the level of programming that people receive, right? Like for my company, I teach mostly basic stuff because I work with children 80% of the time. But so people want to learn more or sign up for your courses, where can they go? I know we talked about your website earlier. If you could just give us your website again.
Sure. It's bugoutcanada.ca with a dash between bugout and Canada, so bugout-canada.ca, or you can just Google us or use any search engine, Bugout Canada, and it'll come right up.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, Wolf.
So right now I'm sitting beside Alan from Bugout Canada. You are the founder of Bugout Canada. So can you tell me a little bit about your background? You have an amazing background.
Well, I grew up on a reserve in northern Quebec, and for my youth of my life, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather, teaching me trapping and hunting methods. And as I grew older, of course, I moved into Mississauga, went to private schools pretty much my whole life, and after school, I decided to join the military, and I joined the military as a combat engineer, and spent 5 years with the military. Served in the Special Forces out of 2 Combat Engineer Regiment, 2 Troop Para, and spent 2 years as an operational soldier in the Special Forces. From there, I wanted to actually re-muster into the Air Force, and the military was not as kind as I thought they would be. They said they spent $1 million to train me as an EOD guy and in the Special Forces, and so I resigned from the military and went back to school, became a commercial pilot, and from a commercial pilot, I spent 14 years as a bush pilot in northern Ontario, flying to a lot of the reserves, and having times where putting my airplane down in the bush and having to spend days out there because it's bad weather, and it's just something I've always really enjoyed. In the north, what we did is we found a lot of the nurses from the nursing stations did not and had not been trained to survive. And we had actually lost a few nurses in some of the colder weather. So I started training them just on the side, just for fun, just to make sure that they knew what they were doing when they went to some of these reserves and had to get, spend a night out in the bush sort of thing. Easy stuff like boiling water and making shelters, that sort of thing, just to stay warm. Even on hot days, temperature goes down, gets cold enough at night, you can get hypothermic, even in the middle of summer. From there, after I got out of flying, I came down to the city and went back to my science background and worked as an environmental scientist for the last 12 years. And during that time, Dan and I have always been friends, and we decided to actually make it a permanent school. And we decided to open up Bugout Canada, and we started off with just doing wilderness survival training. And from doing wilderness survival training, because of our tactical backgrounds, we decided to head towards doing more of the tactical training. So Dan is a Systema master, so he does a lot of the Systema training. I'm a national small arms champion from my military days, and so I decided to continue with doing shooting. And so we do a lot of combat shooting training. Aim fast, shoot fast, basic skills. We get people that are from the military that come out and go, wow, I hadn't learned that much in the military to where they are now, just in a weekend.
So what kind of rifles do you recommend? It's something that we love to talk about on the show, even though as Canadians, for some reason, we always find that Canadians shy away from firearms and an awful lot of them for whatever reason. But do you have a preference in type of rifle that you prefer?
Well, for training purposes, obviously, it's really good to have a .22 rifle. For our training purposes, we use a Ruger 1022, only because it's modifiable to a safe extent, and of course, because it's a carbine, anyone can purchase it if you have the PAL and utilize it during our training. We have a bunch for our school. We own, I think, probably about 12 of them, and we lend them out to the students that don't have them. Although we do recommend other rifles, of course, but for training purposes, because the rounds are inexpensive. You can buy 555 rounds for $24, and so it's a really nice round to use for training.
Nice. Plus, I know with the 1022, I've used them as well. They don't kick as much as like a 308.
Oh yeah, and that's a big thing, especially when we do a lot of female training. We get a lot of females that come out to our courses because they're shied away from going out to the local gun club because they're always pushing the higher calibers, the ARs sort of thing. So the 1022 has no kick to it. You can sit there and shoot it all day. Your shoulder's not going to be sore, because what we want to do is we want to build up the skill set rather than, oh geez, you need to have this big knockdown, to shoot a moose or a deer. So we use the 1022 because it gets them the idea that they can shoot a rifle accurately, and of course the 1022 is the way to go.
Wow, excellent. Okay, so if somebody wanted to take the course, I know Dan had mentioned the course has a beautiful name. It's called Art of the Rifle. I love that name. How would they go about and sign up?
Well, you hook up on the internet, look for us at info@bugoutcanada.ca. If you just type in Bug Out Canada, we're the first guys that come up, even with the Wilderness Survival. We're one of the premier schools in Ontario. We just purchased 100 acres up in the Dorset area, so we're going to set up like the best school that we think will provide training for the individuals. So again, with our training, we have 100% money back guarantee, as well as when you come up, we don't want you to have to worry about food or lodging. We provide lodging and all the food for the course, because we really want you just to learn. That's it.
Is the food like worms, or is it good food?
No. This is like no. We're we actually ask usually what the individuals want to eat during the course. Some of them want to come up and try wild meat, so we'll cook up moose. The last one we had a bunch of moose burgers, for instance.
Wow.
So we had a big barbecue on the Saturday night after the day of training, and I told them straight out, you can have whatever you want for burgers, but we got moose burgers here, and most of them, of course, tried the moose burgers. And a lot of the time in the winter months and stuff like that, we try to have a lot of pastas. We'll make some fettuccine Alfredo or what have you, but it's not. I have a smoker, so I do a lot of smoked meat. So the sandwiches, I'll put it on the slicer and you make your own sandwiches up when you're in the field.
Oh, that's excellent.
And you know what? All the juices and pops actually aren't a big thing. I always thought that people would drink a lot of pop. They don't. They're all water drinkers or juice drinkers. So we always have like lots of orange juice and apple juice available. And lots of water. I bet you I don't even, I bring a case of pop, and over a weekend with 10 people, they don't even drink 6.
Wow.
Yeah, it really surprised me, actually. I was quite surprised by that. Yeah.
So now this event, the Ontario Preppers event. So what were you doing here? I know you held a demo that some people found a little squeamish or challenging. So can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, we did I presented rabbits and a bit of hunting skills, as well as how to dispatch a rabbit, skin it out without using a knife, and using a knife sort of thing. So we brought 6 rabbits out to the event, and I showed how to dispatch a rabbit.
So what does dispatch mean for?
Well, dispatching, killing a rabbit.
Okay.
So, you're going to dispatch it to, and I think a lot of it that I really focused on this year was people need to have more of an attachment to their meat. Where does it come from? What is it? How is it produced? A lot of people don't, you ask them, where does meat come from? Oh, I buy it at the supermarket. So these individuals, I had them take their rabbits and I wanted them to cuddle up with them, get attached to them somewhat. And so they know that what they're doing is a serious event. It's not something that, should be taken lightly. This is going to be stuff that they're going to be eating for supper tonight. And so we walked from picking them up out of the cages to dispatching them. So I had one of the groups would dispatch the rabbit and the other one would have to skin it. So, and that's the direction we want to go. Be more attached to your food. It's what you're having every day.
And I think that also, I suppose, from a humanist point of view, sort of understand the concept of your food more and things like that. Yeah,
absolutely. You've got to have that contact with your food, and I think a lot of people don't realize, that it's death. You're killing an animal and you're going to digest it and you go through it. They become a little bit more respectful. I think after doing it a few times, they realize, wow, this is something that is serious. So next time they get a burger or something like that, they know where it came from. Somebody had to kill it, deal with it, skin it up, utilize all its parts, and then move on.
Wow, that's something that a lot of people, I think the term that's coined is called cityots, the people that live in the city and are totally ignorant to the way the world actually is.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of people that can learn from an experience like that. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's and again, it's something that we like to get out and teach every time. This is the second year that we've done this course. Last year I did bug in or bug out. The pros and cons of doing both and or either. This year, the event is absolutely phenomenal with the turnout, and it's only going to get bigger. Again, this event is based on the idea of whether you're just a beginner prepper or a long-term prepper. You look at the diversity of the individuals that are here. Some of them been down this road for a long time, been prepping for a long time, and we've had people that are just starting. And all the presenters here are, experts in their fields. And if you walk away with sitting into one of the courses and lectures and take one thing away from this weekend, you're now on your way to being self-reliant and not depending on other individuals to provide you with your security, your food, and where it comes from.
Yeah, wow. And I think, and I'm really passionate about that when it comes to prepping, is it's not about this removed Hollywood end of the world scenario, but like we had talked about, and I talked with a couple of our other guests, that it could be something as simple as you lose your job, your car breaks down, now you got to stay home for a couple of days. What are you going to do? You've got to make sure you can take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And again, you see, and we get the idiots that come out, and that's good because it opens up their eyes to, what, we're not Hollywood. This is the real thing. These are hardcore preppers that are out here. And we accept everybody for what they are, all their skill sets. You know what? I learned from Doug today. He was showing us some different knots. I was like, wow, I've never seen that knot before. That's a phenomenal knot. Got to put that in my repertoire. And I've been doing this for a long time. So those sorts of things. We don't just come out here and think that we know it all. We are constantly learning as well. Mm-hmm. And, Dan and I were looking at some of the knots. It was fabulous, because I hadn't seen it before. And, and not being arrogant, but, I've been there, done it. And it's always something that we learn, always. And if you stop learning, then, you've limited yourself.
Sort of, and you're on a bad road. Yeah. I know that's the same with pretty much all outdoor instructors I meet. All of us are continuing to learn all the time. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. I appreciate it very much. So again, we can look you up at bugout-canada.ca.
Now I know we have a few other people waiting patiently to be interviewed. So who do we have next here on the show?
So I'm here with Christine, and now you have a military background.
That's
right. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I was in for 16 years. The first 9 was full-time. And then I thought I'd put myself through school and become a nurse. So I went part-time in the military, still keeping my foot in the door. Didn't quite like working with women all the time. Went back to the Army and unfortunately was injured. But I'm retired now. And I sort of wanted to get back into the swing of things in the outdoor lifestyle and the camping that I enjoyed one time before my injury. And now that I'm kind of well enough, I'm back at it.
Wow. So what brings you to the annual Preppers Meet this year?
I think because I joined a lot of groups from meetup.com, and they sort of turned me on to this group, and they said, this is an annual meetup. It's going to be great. You should make it out here. And I definitely took the advice of people that I've grown to admire in a short time.
Well, that's really cool. So what are the things that you've loved the most about the weekend?
Every presenter has had something important to say. Their presentations were not pardon my French, half-assed. The Army, pardon me, coming out. They were well thought out, well planned, and well presented.
Excellent. That's cool. So it's a 3-day event, right? You're here for all 3 days?
I am.
That's very cool. So, you know, if you don't mind me stating the obvious, you're a woman, and
last time I checked, yes.
we, you know, it's always a really great thing to see more and more women out. Now, we were just talking to Colleen, and Colleen had mentioned that it's almost getting to be 50-50, which is great to see, because 10, 20 years ago when I started out in the outdoor rec, it was only men doing it, right? And they had to be ex-military, or you weren't even taken seriously, right? So can you I'd love to hear your thoughts a little bit more about that.
Well, that's why I started my own group on meetup.com, if you don't mind me saying.
No,
the name.
Of course.
It's Survivalist Women of Ontario, and not because I had been intimidated joining in on what I thought would be a male-dominated sort of activity, but I do realize that some other women might have trouble, and some women have expressed to me that they were intimidated by the fact that they felt there'd only be men, that they would be treated as not so important, and their voice wouldn't be heard, and they might say something stupid or embarrassing, and they were afraid to join. And I thought, I'll start a women's group, get them out that way, answer the questions, make them feel at home and safe, and then gradually introduce them into the other groups that exist that I know through my own experiences have been very helpful in teaching me new skills, even though I thought I was pretty skilled at bushcraft and shooting. I've still learned stuff since then.
You know, every time we talk to instructors, no matter who they are, how big their schools are, or whatever, you always hear them all say, I'm still learning stuff from other people.
Oh, definitely. I was teaching rifles, shooting, 5.56 in the military for several years. I went to one weekend of shooting, and I was considered a very good shot. Not stellar, but a very good shot. I went out to one weekend of Bug Out Canada's Art of the Rifle. I learned more, and I'm not pulling your leg here. In one weekend of shooting, I had a better practice and learned more about the rifle than I did in 16 years of service.
Wow.
I feel cheated because I wish I'd known this prior to my starting teaching, because I would have liked to, my students to have benefited from this too.
That's incredible. And that was Art of the Rifle, right? And I just love that name. Every time it just sounds so beautiful. And I guess it is a beautiful course.
It is
like
an art.
Said.
It is an art.
So.
And Dan, the instructor, he's Zen, man. He is the Zen Buddha master of rifles.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what other courses, what other workshops did you take today at the here at the meet?
Today, let's see, there was an improvised materials, use of recycled materials, found materials by Robert, who runs the Durham Region Preppers Society group on meetup.com, I believe. And he went into some Mylar and how he has made and invented and reused things in very, very ingenious ways. Excellent. I think I also went through choosing your bug out location with two wonderful women, I wish I could remember their names, who knew what they were talking about, and apparently set up some sort of online course that next year will be available to everyone.
So now, I was there for the Mylar usage, and I never put two and two together that the emergency Mylar blankets are the same as a potato chip bag.
I know,
but the potato chip bags are like a lot heavier duty.
Yeah,
and I thought, wow, learned something new every day, I guess.
Well,
right?
I'm already because Rob and I have already spoke prior to this weekend, because I go to his meetups, because they're very good meetups, about his Mylar obsession, and he really is the tip man. But we're going to go together, my group and his group, and have a solar workshop, and we're going to have things like his oven invention from Mylar and chip bags and stuff like that. I'm going to do a tire stove that is very popular in Africa, and I've seen people of Africa use them and cook and boil food in ingenious ways. And I also want to get my hands on a Fresnel lens, I hope I'm saying that right, and do some smelting.
Well, so can you tell us what a Fresnel lens is for
I certainly can.
somebody who doesn't know?
Monsieur Fresnel was a French physicist who invented a lens that would amplify that of your lighthouses. But
Okay.
later has had different uses, including the first flat screen TVs about 15 years ago. In the front screen, just behind the screen, there's a Fresnel lens. And if you take the screen off and take the Fresnel lens out, you can hold it up, position it in such a way that the focal point will reach 2,000 degrees.
So if I ever see one on the side of the road, I should
It's a death ray.
jack it and steal the lens.
Go on,
Yeah.
go on Kijiji. People will let you come and take these old TVs from their homes.
Okay.
Just to get rid of it for free. And then you have a Fresnel lens, and it's amazing. You can basically melt a pile of pennies, like 10 pennies in 10 seconds.
Whoa!
Yeah.
That makes for some great YouTube videos, I bet.
Oh, man, I can't wait to play with my Fresnel lens. I just got one, so.
Awesome. Okay, so again, if you just want to tell us about your website, your meetup group, in case people want to go on there.
Oh, certainly. Again, it's Survivalist Women of Ontario, and everyone is welcome. If you're a woman, you come to all the meetings. We will have open meetings that men and women are both invited to. And the leaders of different survivalist groups are, of course, always honorary members as well.
Oh, awesome. I guess that might be me, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
My pleasure.
Now, before we continue with the show, I'd like to again encourage our audience to check out the Annual Preppers Meet website at www.annualpreppersmeet.com. Well, I'm getting word that our next guest is ready, so let's go back to the Wolfman.
So I'm sitting here with Chris, and is this your first time coming to an event like this?
Yeah, it's my first time. My friend Christine actually brought me because she's trying to get more women involved in this.
Well, that's really cool. So tell me about your experience. Like, you set up your camp, or you're camping, right?
Yep, came in here camping, and apparently I'm doing it the luxury way with the car right beside the tent, but I'm hopefully working my way towards, bringing less and less stuff. But it's been an amazing experience. There's so much to learn here. I got to do a tour of the Ark 2.
So tell us about that. No, nobody's really talked about that on the show yet today.
It was amazing. You go down in there, and the man that built it explains everything, every little detail. And you go into these different rooms. There's a dentist chair, and apparently I think I was the first one, or the only one of the tours lately, to jump in the tour or into the chair and pretend to use an instrument. And so we got a picture of that. So it should be available somewhere on the internet. And there's map rooms. There's stairs and a tunnel that brings you up, and you can actually see cars that are parked over near my tent. So you know that you've traveled a far distance from where you entered. And it's just been I've had the most fun today that I've had ever. And I've learned so much, especially with the conference at the beginning, learning about the different survival things, listening to Shay and everybody. It's just been amazing. Getting to do archery for the first time. It's something that I definitely would want to do again and would want to get more people doing.
Well, that's really cool. So one of the courses you took was fixing rabbits, right? To prepare a rabbit for eating.
Yes.
So now earlier we had Alan who explained it from an instructor's point of view. So I would love for you to tell me about it a bit more from your point of view. Like, what did you do? What was the experience like?
Well, Alan asked us that when we pick our rabbit, that we bond with it for a little bit and get to know it, make sure that it's calm, because, it's just respectful for the animal to have a good time right before, he's killed. And so myself and Christine, we were partners on this, and we both sat there and pet the rabbit and waited our turn. And then it was my turn to hang him upside down and take a rod, like a wooden rod, and just crack him over the head. And my first hit was a little off center, so I felt horrible for about 2.5 seconds, but my second hit was dead on. And then my friend Christine got to take the hide off, and we had somebody else help us skin off the feet, so now we have rabbit's feet. And it's just amazing.
How lucky, but not so much for the rabbit.
No. But also another lucky thing, there's another person here, another prepper that has a bird, a parrot on his shoulder. And he came over onto my arm and pooped on my arm. So I'm just getting luck all around.
Wow, that's cool. So you're definitely going to come back to something like this again.
Oh, definitely. And all the events, not just this annual Preppers Meet, just the different events that everybody's putting on. This sort of got the fire under me to start doing prepping.
So what attracted you to this? Like, traditionally, up until I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, it was traditionally mostly men, and now we're seeing, and it's a very positive thing, we're seeing much more women coming out, even to the point where sometimes we have more women coming out than men, especially for when I host archery and things. So can you tell me what sort of brings that that interest from you in that?
Well, when I made friends with Christine, she was involved in this prepping, and going over it, I've been having trouble with self-confidence and just moving forward, and knowing that I can take my own life into my hands and do what I need to do to survive it builds your confidence so much that in your self-esteem that it makes you feel great. It's like a natural high, knowing that you can take care of yourself if you absolutely needed to. And I think just more women are realizing that they're equal to men. They have the same abilities. We might not have always the same strength as the strongest guy, but we're just as smart and resourceful. And, we want to make it in the world too. Women have to be there when, what was the acronym? SH?
Yeah, when the stuff hits the fan.
Yeah, when the stuff hits the fan.
That's right.
Women have to be there too, because the world's not going to exist. So we need to empower ourselves and come out.
And one of the most empowering things that I always find, and we teach archery lessons all the time, and we have literally thousands of students come out, over a 2-month period, is that women are inherently better at archery. And I don't know why, but they always kick butt.
Really?
Every time. Yeah.
It's probably they're imagining some guy they didn't like on the target, and they're going after it.
Yeah, I have no idea, but my thought is maybe that women are much more detail-oriented in all the stance and everything else, and the concentration and all that stuff. So I don't know.
Think they're not caught up in being the best. I find that the women that are here, they're here to try to learn, and we're okay if we fail. When I had my shots, I didn't hit the target, but I was getting there. And I didn't mind failing, so...
Yeah, I guess. And archery isn't about winning. It's about enjoyment of the sport, right?
Right. And honing in on it. So it's definitely something that I want to look into and go and get lessons.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, well, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate that. So you found this through Christina. And what was her group again? She had a meetup group, right?
Women Survivalists.
Awesome.
Of Ontario.
Cool. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Unfortunately, we've reached the end of this special extended edition of the Barefoot Bushcraft radio show. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from all the guests we featured on today's broadcast. You can learn more about them or the event itself at annualpreppersmeet.com. This is A.D. Venture, joined by the Wolfman. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Barefoot Bushcraft radio show.